You are the worst mistake of my life. I hate you. My mother screamed at me. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and final. My mother's face was contorted with decades of bitterness, her hands gripping the walker so tightly her knuckles had turned white. I should have been devastated. These were the words I'd feared hearing my entire life, confirmation of what I'd always suspected. But instead of breaking down, I did something that shocked us both. I smiled. Not a happy smile. Not a fake one. But a smile of pure, liberating clarity. And in that moment, as my smile spread across my face, I watched something crumble behind my mother's eyes. Something she'd held onto for 34 years. Her certainty that she could still hurt me. That smile changed everything. My name is Rachel Stevens. I'm 34 years old and work as a high school guidance counselor in Allentown, Pennsylvania. My story that I'm about to tell you isn't just about a cruel mother and a wounded daughter. It's about how sometimes the best revenge isn't making someone suffer, it's refusing to let them make you suffer anymore. If you've ever felt unwanted, invisible, or not enough for someone who should have loved you unconditionally, this story is for you. And I promise, it's worth staying until the end. I grew up in Oakwood Heights, a middle-class suburb outside Allentown. Our house was a modest split level with meticulously maintained flower beds my father had planted. From the outside, we looked like any other family on the block, Dad teaching history at the local high school, Mom teaching English, and me, their only child. My father, Jack, was my hero. Tall and lean with kind eyes that crinkled when he laughed, he filled our home with warmth. Every morning, he'd make my lunch for school, drawing little cartoons on my napkins. Every night, he'd read to me, doing different voices for each character. Daddy, why does the big bad wolf sound like Grandma Miller? I'd giggle. He'd wink and whisper, because they both have dentures that whistle when they talk, sending me into fits of laughter. My mother, Diane, was different. Before I was born, she'd been working toward her PhD in literature. She was brilliant, my father always said. But I came along, unplanned, unexpected, and her academic dreams got shelved. There were good moments with her. I remember her teaching me to make snickerdoodles when I was 6, her patient hands guiding mine as we rolled the dough in cinnamon sugar. I remember her braiding my hair for picture day, her fingers quick and nimble. But even in those moments, there was always something held back, as if she were performing motherhood rather than feeling it. You have your father's eyes, she'd say, and somehow it never sounded like a compliment. When I was 10, she finally returned to her PhD program. Dad picked up even more slack at home, becoming both mother and father most days. Your mom's brilliant, he'd say while helping me with math homework. She's going to write books someday that change how people think. I believed him. I was proud of her, even if her academic success meant she had less time for me. Then, when I was 12, everything changed. It was a Saturday morning in May. The air was sweet with the scent of freshly cut grass as my father mowed the lawn. I was inside, talking on the phone with my best friend Lizzie, planning a sleepover. Ask if I can come over tonight, Lizzie said. I peeked out the window to get Dad's attention. He was face down on the lawn, the mower still running beside him. What happened next is a blur in my memory. Screaming for my mother. The neighbor rushing over. The ambulance. The hollow sound of the doctor's voice saying, "I'm sorry, we did everything we could." Heart attack, they said. Nothing anyone could have done. At the funeral, my mother stood like a statue, accepting condolences with mechanical nods. I waited for her to fall apart, to need me, to let me comfort her. She never did. That night, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my father's coffee mug. "Mom?" I whispered. "Can I get you anything?" She looked at me as if seeing a stranger. "Go to bed, Rachel." "But I thought maybe we could." I said go to bed. Her voice cracked like a whip. I can't deal with you right now. I retreated to my room and cried myself to sleep, hugging the stuffed bear my father had given me for my 10th birthday. In the weeks that followed, I waited for her to soften, to grieve with me, to become the mother I desperately needed. Instead, she retreated into herself, emerging only to criticize. Your room is a pigsty, she'd snap, though I'd just cleaned it. Do you have to laugh so loudly? I'm trying to work, she'd say, though I was just watching a TV show with the volume low. One evening, I made dinner, spaghetti, the only dish I really knew how to cook. I set the table, even put out a candle like Dad used to do for fancy family dinners. She came in, looked at my efforts and sighed. I'm not hungry. And you've made a mess of the kitchen. I stood there, 12 years old, fighting back tears. I was just trying to help. Well, don't, she said, walking away. You're just like your father, good intentions, messy execution. From that day forward, I made it my mission to be perfect. I kept my grades impeccable. I joined the debate team because she'd been on it in high school. I learned to move quietly through the house, to need nothing, to ask for nothing. I became invisible, hoping that would please her. It didn't. When I was 14, I won a regional essay contest. The prize was $500 and publication in a literary magazine. My English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, drove me to the ceremony because my mother had too much grading to do. Your essay was remarkable, Rachel, Mrs. Patterson said. You have a gift. I clutched the certificate all the way home, imagining my mother's reaction. Maybe this would be it, the achievement that would finally make her proud. When I walked in, she was at the dining table, surrounded by student papers. Mom, look. I held out the certificate. I won the Baxter Literary Award. They're publishing my essay. She glanced up briefly. That's nice. Did you take out the trash like I asked this morning? I felt something deflate inside me. Yes. Good. She returned to her grading. The prize is $500, I added, still hoping. This made her look up again. Well, that will help with your college fund. Don't let it go to your head, though. One essay doesn't make you a writer. I taped the certificate inside my closet door where I could see it, but she couldn't. On my 16th birthday, I sat alone in my room with a store-bought cupcake. She'd left a $20 bill on the counter with a note, working late. Order pizza if you want. I didn't. Instead, I lit a single candle, sang to myself, and wished for the day I could leave. Happy birthday to me, I whispered, tears sliding down my cheeks as I blew out the candle. My junior year, I took the SATs and scored in the 99th percentile. 7 acceptance letters arrived from colleges, including 3 with substantial scholarships. When I showed her the letter from Cornell with its generous financial package, she frowned. Cornell? That's in New York. Pretty far. Not congratulations. Not I'm proud of you. Just the implication that I was abandoning her. It's one of the best psychology programs in the country, I said. Psychology? Her eyebrows rose. I thought you were considering English literature. I was, but I think I want to be a counselor. Help kids who are struggling. She studied me for a moment. Well, I suppose that makes sense. You always were sensitive. The way she said sensitive made it sound like a weakness. I went to Cornell anyway. My dorm room was tiny, with cinderblock walls and a roommate who played terrible music at all hours. It was heaven. For the first time, I could breathe without feeling like each breath was somehow wrong. My roommate, Ashley, was from California, and seemed to have no concept of personal space or indoor voices. But she was kind in a way I wasn't used to. Your mom never calls you, she observed one day as I hung up from my weekly check-in call home. I shrugged. She's busy. That's messed up, Ashley said bluntly. My mom calls me like 3 times a day. It's annoying, but at least I know she cares. I'd never thought about it that way. The calls I made home followed the same script every time. Hi, Mom. Rachel. How are classes? Good. How are you? Busy. The department chair is pushing for more publication credits. Oh. Well, I'm doing well in developmental psych. Professor Lenowitz says I have a natural gift for. That's nice. Listen, I need to grade these papers. Same time next week. Sure. Bye, Mom. Goodbye. She never asked about my friends or if I was happy. She never told me she missed me. The calls were obligations, nothing more. Junior year, I met Scott in my abnormal psychology class. Thoughtful, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence that drew me in. On our 3rd date, we stayed up all night talking in a 24-hour diner, drinking terrible coffee, and sharing pieces of our lives. Tell me about your family, he said. I gave him the sanitized version at first. Father died when I was 12, mother is an English professor, only child. But something about his patient silence made me want to tell the truth. My mother hates me, I finally said. Or if not hates, then resents. She's resented me from the day I was born. Instead of the awkward platitudes I expected, I'm sure that's not true, or all mothers love their children. Scott reached across the table and took my hand. Some people aren't capable of loving properly, he said simply. That's not on you. That's on them. I stared at him, feeling something shift inside me. For the first time, I considered that maybe I wasn't the problem. Maybe I never had been. When I brought Scott home for Thanksgiving my senior year, my mother was oddly animated. She wore makeup, laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when she spoke. I watched in confusion as she transformed into this charming, engaged person I barely recognized. Later, when Scott went to bring in our bags from the car, she leaned close and whispered, "He's too good for you, Rachel. Men like that don't stick around for girls like you." The words hit me like a physical blow. The drive back to campus was quiet. Finally, Scott said, "I understand now." He reached for my hand across the console. "You deserved better." We dated for another 6 months, but her poison worked its way into my mind. Every time he was kind, I waited for the catch. Every time he said he loved me, I doubted. Eventually, he got tired of trying to convince me. I couldn't blame him. I graduated summa cum laude. My mother sat stiffly through the ceremony, leaving immediately after without meeting my professors or friends. I accepted a position as a school counselor back in Pennsylvania, not in Allentown, but close enough to visit if needed. Part of me still hoped that proximity might heal what was broken between us. My apartment was small but mine. Plants lined the windowsills, spider plants, pothos, peace lilies, all thriving under my care. Books filled the shelves. For the first time, I created a space that reflected who I was, not who I was trying to be for someone else. I loved my job. Teenagers came to my office carrying burdens too heavy for their young shoulders, and I listened. Really listened. Sometimes that was all they needed, someone to witness their pain without judgment. "Ms. Stevens, my dad says I'm stupid," 14-year-old Ethan told me during one session, his eyes fixed on his shoes. "And what do you think, Ethan?" He looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you think you're stupid?" "No," he said after a moment. "I think I'm just different. I learn differently." I nodded. "I think you're right. And being different isn't the same as being stupid." "Not at all." "How do I make him see that?" The question sent me back to my own childhood, to all the times I'd tried to make my mother see me, really see me. Sometimes, I said carefully, we can't change how others see us. But we can change how we see ourselves. I was still working on that myself. The ghost of my mother's words, "too good for you," still haunted me. I was in therapy, trying to exorcise it, but these things take time. Then, 3 years into my job, the call came. "Rachel? It's Mrs. Winters from next door to your mother. She fell. They think it might be a stroke." The hospital was sterile and cold. My mother looked small in the bed, her hair, now more gray than brown, spread across the pillow. The doctor spoke in hushed tones. "Minor stroke. Good chances for recovery. Would need care for a while." I nodded, made arrangements for medical leave from work, and moved temporarily back into my childhood bedroom. The irony wasn't lost on me, returning to care for the woman who had barely cared for me. The first week back in my childhood home was all mechanics. Medications, doctor appointments, helping my mother to the bathroom. She accepted my help with tight-lipped silence, her eyes following me with something between suspicion and resentment. "You don't have to do this," she said on the third night as I helped her into bed. Not "thank you." Not "I appreciate you." Just a statement that sounded more like accusation than gratitude. "I know," I replied simply. By the second week, she could move around with a walker. Her speech had returned to normal. The doctor was pleased with her progress. "You're lucky to have such a dedicated daughter," he told her during a checkup. She didn't respond. That night, I made soup, her favorite, potato leek, from my father's recipe. I'd found his old recipe box tucked away in a kitchen cabinet, the cards yellowed with age but still bearing his familiar handwriting. "Dinner's ready," I called, setting the table with care. She shuffled in with her walker, eyeing the steaming bowl suspiciously. "What is this?" "Potato leek soup. Dad's recipe." Something flickered across her face at the mention of him. She took one spoonful and pushed the bowl away. "Too much pepper," she said. "Always rushing things, Rachel. That's your problem." I bit my tongue and took the bowl away. In the kitchen, I stared at the soup pot, fighting tears. 22 years since his death, and she still couldn't bear to be reminded of him, not even through his cooking. The next day, while she napped, I went into the attic looking for an extra blanket. The air was thick with dust and memories. Boxes of Christmas decorations we hadn't used since my father died. His old fishing gear. My childhood toys. Then I spotted a box labeled "Private" in my father's handwriting. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside were bundles of letters tied with faded ribbon. I shouldn't have opened them. But something compelled me. They were love letters, passionate, beautiful words from my father to my mother from before they were married. "My dearest Diane," one began, "I count the hours until I see you again. When you walked into that first English lit class, I knew my life would never be the same. Your mind, your passion, your laugh, they've bewitched me completely. I dream of our future, teaching together, writing together, building a family together." His handwriting, so familiar even after all these years, flowed across the pages with hope and devotion. I touched the paper gently, feeling closer to him than I had in years. But beneath those were others. Letters she had never sent. Drafts, perhaps, or pages from a journal. In one, dated just after my birth, she wrote, "I look at her and feel nothing. What kind of mother feels nothing? Jack is besotted with her, but all I see is the career I've put on hold, the life I'm not living. He doesn't understand, how could he? He gets to be the fun parent while I'm trapped in this endless cycle of feeding and changing and soothing. He still goes to campus, still writes, still lives in the world. I'm just a vessel now, emptied of everything but responsibility." My hands shook as I read another, dated shortly before his death. "Jack says I'm too hard on Rachel. That she's just a child. But every time I look at her, I see my own failure. The path not taken. The woman I could have been. He loves her so easily, so completely. Why can't I? What's broken in me that I look at my own child and feel this resentment? She's so much like him, eager to please, sensitive, wearing her heart on her sleeve. It exhausts me. And the most painful, dated a week after his funeral. He left me alone with her. How am I supposed to love her now when she reminds me of everything I've lost? She has his eyes, his laugh, his ridiculous optimism. It's like being haunted. Everyone keeps saying what a comfort she must be to me. They don't understand. Looking at her is like staring at a ghost. A ghost of the life I gave up for a family I never wanted in the first place. I sat in the dusty attic, letters scattered around me, and finally understood. It had never been about me. I was just the physical manifestation of choices she regretted, dreams she'd abandoned. When I came downstairs, she was awake, watching a game show with disinterest. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the towering figure of my childhood, but a bitter woman who had chosen resentment over healing. I made a sandwich, I said. Turkey and Swiss. The way Dad used to make them. Her eyes flashed at his name. I'm not hungry. You need to eat to take your medication. Don't tell me what I need, Rachel. I've been taking care of myself for a long time. I placed the plate on the coffee table. Have you, though? Because from where I'm standing, you've been letting bitterness do the caretaking. Her head snapped up. Excuse me. I found the letters in the attic, Mom. Dad's letters. And yours. The color drained from her face. For once, she had no sharp retort, no cutting remark. I understand now, I said quietly. You resented me from the beginning. I wasn't just an unplanned pregnancy. I was the physical proof of the life you didn't choose. You had no right to read those, she whispered, but there was no fire behind it. No, I didn't. But I'm glad I did. Because now I know it was never about me being inadequate. It was about you being unable to accept your own choices. She turned away, jaw tight. You don't understand anything. I understand enough. I moved to stand in front of her. Dad loved you so much. He believed in you. He thought you hung the moon. And instead of cherishing that, you resented him for loving me too. Stop it, she hissed. No. For once you're going to listen. My voice was steady, though my heart raced. I spent my entire childhood trying to be perfect for you. Trying to be invisible when that didn't work. Trying to make you proud. Trying to make you love me. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. Years of unsaid words were finally finding their way out. And you know what? You couldn't. Not because I was unlovable, but because you couldn't love yourself. You blamed me for choices you made. She stood suddenly, walker forgotten, swaying slightly. Her face contorted with rage and something else, fear perhaps. You were the worst mistake of my life, she spat. I hate you. There it was. The words I'd always feared. The confirmation of what I'd suspected all along. But instead of breaking me, they set me free. I smiled. The smile caught her off guard. She had expected tears, pleading, maybe even for me to storm out. But not this, not calm acceptance. I know you think that, I said, my voice steady despite the tears. But here's what you don't understand, Mom. I'm not your mistake. I'm your missed opportunity. Her mouth opened, then closed. You could have loved me. You could have seen me as a gift instead of a burden. Dad did. But you chose bitterness. And that choice has cost you everything. If you've ever been told you're not enough by someone who should have loved you unconditionally, hit that like button right now. Their words don't define you, your response to them does. And keep watching, because what happened next changed everything. I picked up my bag from the couch. I've arranged for a home health aide to come tomorrow. She'll stay until you're fully recovered. I've paid for 3 months. You're leaving? Her voice was small now, uncertain. Yes. But not because of what you just said. I'm leaving because I finally understand that I will never be enough for you. And that's not my failure, it's yours. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. I loved you my whole life, Mom. Even when you made it impossible. That's my gift to you, whether you want it or not. I drove straight to a hotel, checked in, and finally let myself fall apart. 22 years of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. 22 years of measuring myself against impossible standards. 22 years of believing I was the problem. No more. That night, I wrote her a letter. Not for her sake but for mine. I listed every moment I could remember when she had dimmed my light, the essay contest, the birthdays forgotten, the achievements dismissed. But I also wrote about my successes that had nothing to do with her. My career helping students find their paths. My friends who loved me unconditionally. The life I had built despite her, not because of her. I ended it with, I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your bitterness anymore. Your biggest mistake wasn't having me, it was missing the chance to know me. I mailed the letter before I could reconsider and drove back to my apartment in Allentown, to my plants and books and the life I had created. My phone rang constantly for the first few days. I didn't answer. There were voice messages, some angry, some pleading. I deleted them all. This wasn't about punishing her. It was about protecting myself. My therapist, Dr. Myers, nodded approvingly when I told her what had happened. That smile, she said, was a powerful statement. It felt like liberation, I admitted. All these years, I've been terrified of hearing those words. And then when I finally did, they didn't have the power I thought they would. Because you finally understood they were about her, not you. Exactly. 3 weeks later, a package arrived. Inside was my father's recipe box, full of index cards in his familiar handwriting. Tucked inside was a note in my mother's trembling script. He would have wanted you to have these. I should have given them to you years ago. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly. But it was something, an acknowledgement, perhaps, of all she had withheld. I ran my fingers over my father's handwriting, tears blurring my vision. His potato leek soup. His Sunday morning pancakes. His famous Christmas cookies that the neighbors would line up for. Little pieces of him, returned to me at last. I called Mrs. Winters to check on my mother. She's doing better physically, the older woman reported. The home health aide says she's making good progress. And otherwise? Mrs. Winters hesitated. She's different. Quieter. She asked me about you yesterday, if I'd heard from you. What did you say? I told her I hadn't, but that I was sure you were fine. You always were a strong girl, Rachel. I thanked her and hung up, unsure how to feel. Part of me had expected my mother to continue in her bitterness. To double down. To paint me as the villain in her story, the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her after a stroke. But perhaps my smile had shaken something loose in her. Perhaps seeing me refuse to be destroyed by her words had forced her to reconsider. 6 months passed. I heard from Mrs. Winters that my mother had recovered physically. She had started volunteering at the library twice a week, reading to children. The image was so at odds with the mother I knew that I almost laughed when Mrs. Winters told me. Reading to children. I repeated. My mother. Oh yes, Mrs. Winters said. The kids love her. She does all the voices, apparently. like my father used to do for me. Then, on my birthday, a day my mother had largely ignored for years, a card arrived. Inside, in her careful handwriting. I read your letter every day. You were right. About everything. I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed. I'm trying to learn how. Below that was a gift card to a local plant nursery. She remembered I loved plants, and a photo I'd never seen before. My father holding me as a baby, his face alight with joy. On the back in my mother's handwriting, he loved you from the first moment. I should have told you that. It wasn't everything. It wasn't even enough. But it was a beginning. We're still working on our relationship. Small steps. Coffee once a month. Brief phone calls that no longer follow the old script. There are still moments of tension, still barbs that slip through. Old habits die hard. But there's something new there too, an effort on her part that never existed before. Last month, she asked if she could come see my apartment. As she walked through the rooms, taking in my plants, my books, the life I'd built, she said something I never thought I'd hear. You've done well, Rachel. Better than well. I'm proud of you. The words came awkwardly, as if she were speaking a foreign language. But they came. Today, when I sit with teenagers in my office, kids like Ethan, whose father tells him he's worthless, or Brianna, whose mother compares her constantly to her perfect sister, I tell them what took me decades to learn. Their words show their wounds, not your worth. You aren't defined by their inability to love you properly. And when they ask how I know, I tell them my story. Not all of it, but enough. I tell them about the night my mother told me I was her biggest mistake, and how my smile changed everything. Because that smile wasn't just defiance. It wasn't smugness or false bravado. It was recognition. In that moment, I finally saw the truth. Her cruelty reflected her pain, not my value. And once I understood that, I was free. That's the revenge part of this story, though it's probably not the kind of revenge you expected. I didn't set out to hurt her back. I didn't plot to make her suffer. My revenge wasn't in causing pain, it was in refusing to receive it anymore. My revenge was healing myself. Breaking the cycle of pain she had started. Building a life so full of purpose and joy that her bitterness couldn't touch it. You see, sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about refusing to let them make you suffer anymore. So if you're carrying someone else's words like stones in your pockets, weighing you down, maybe it's time to smile. To set them down. To walk away lighter. Their wounds are not your identity. Their mistakes are not your burden. You are not what they couldn't give you. You are what you choose to become in spite of it. And that choice, to heal, to grow, to live joyfully despite the pain others have caused you, that's the most powerful form of revenge there is. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps me share more stories like this one. And if you've had to set boundaries with toxic family members, share your experience in the comments below. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight back, it's to smile, walk away, and build something beautiful from the ruins of what hurt you.